Vigil strange I kept on the field one night. When you...
My son! My comrade!
Dropped at my side. One look I but gave, which your dear eyes returned with a look I shall never forget. One touch of your hand to mine, oh boy, reached up as you lay on the ground. Then onward I sped in the battle, till late in the night, relieved to the place once again. Found you in death.
So cold, dear comrade.
But not a tear fell, not even a long-drawn sigh. Vigil, for you, brave boy.
I could not save you. Swift was your death. I loved you faithfully and cared for your living. But I'm sure we shall meet again.
Ending my vigil, strange of night. Vigil for my boy, my comrade, swiftly slain. Vigil I never forget. I rose from the chill ground and folded my soldier well in his blanket, and buried him where he fell.
I felt a funeral in my brain, and mourners to and fro kept treading till it seemed that sense was breaking through. And when they all were seated, a service like a drum kept beating till I thought my mind was going numb. And then I heard them lift a box and creak across my soul with those same boots of lead again. Then space began to toll. My life closed twice before its close. It yet remains to see if immortality unveil a third event to me, so huge, so hopeless to conceive, as these that twice befell. Parting is all we know of heaven, and all we need of hell.
Hey, Henry,
What is it?
take a look at this, will ya? It's just a piece of an old friend of mine asked me to look over. He wants it published in The Atlantic. Another story from the upper middle class written for wealthy, educated America.
Of course it is. It always is. That's exactly what this country needs. Yet another romanticized display of emotions and sentimentality. It's always the same story, the same characters, the same situations, just told in slightly different ways. It's also uninspired.
Cheers to that. It's about time someone started writing about ordinary men and women, about the struggles facing the middle class every single day. Write about something real for a change.
No one wants to read about real problems. They're all too busy to give a moment's notice to the true struggles of America's working class. They think that just because they don't acknowledge them, no problems exist.
Realism should exclude nothing that is true. It's our social and moral responsibility as artists to broaden the increasingly narrow spectrum of human minds. If something is true, it really ought to be discussed in a piece. Yet the truth may be indecent at times, but it can be vicious. It can never be corrupt or depraved. That's just not in its nature.
The whole thing is rather depressing to me. It says a lot about our culture, really.
You know what the real problem is, gentlemen? It's a natural obsession with writing in an elevated literary style. It's tearing this country apart and dividing the people of America based on their literary competency. It's turning art, especially literature, into some kind of privilege that's only accessible to the high society people, educated people. It's ruining this country, slowly but surely.
It's not quite so simple, William. You of all people should know that. It's not an easy task to write a story that's both accessible and interesting to all classes. I mean, all those elements are far from compatible.
To hell with literary style. I mean, who are we to judge what people we can and cannot read? What gives us the right? When did it become the responsibility of writers to dictate such things and to look down on ordinary citizens from some sort of moral high ground?
I think there are still have to be some artistic element to writing. What's a good story without a little room for interpretation?
Henry, you know I care for you, and you know I respect the hell out of you, but your stories, don't get me wrong, they're beyond brilliant, as always. It's just that your style, well, it really holds you back in a way. If you could gear your stories to the middle class, my God, you'd be famous. You would. What about you, Clemens? You gonna give us a real story, or just more of your satires? Really though, why don't you give it a try? Write an outstanding piece about an ordinary man with an ordinary life, an ordinary name.
Like Hank or Morgan or something along those lines.
Yes, like Hank or Morgan. Why don't you write a piece about this Hank character and send it over when you're finished? I'd like to get a couple realist pieces published in The Atlantic next month. You know I'm a fan of your work. It doesn't need to be finished, just give me a sample. But I swear to God, Samuel, I'm not publishing any of your shit idealist stories, regardless how funny they are. America needs a break. No more, Clemens, you understand me?
I've got a realist story for you, all right? It's as believable as any other. Perfect. I've got to get you over to Mr. William Dean Howes.
Hi, and welcome to tonight's episode of Contested Frontiers, Biography of an American Writer. In tonight's episode, we've decided to focus on 4 of the most influential female authors of all time. I sat down with them to discuss their inspiration, their writing process, and their favorite pieces. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's episode of Contested Frontiers.
I was able to sit down with Sitkala Shah, one of the most prominent and respected Native American authors of all time. Why don't you tell me about your relationship with your mother?
Often she was sad and silent, with her lips compressed into hard, bitter lines. I'd cling to her hand and beg to know what made her tears fall, and she said, "Hush, my little daughter. Must never talk about my tears." She smiled through her tears. She seldom wept before me.
What did she say when you told her you wanted to go to an American school?
I remember her saying, "I knew you were wishing to go because Judewan has filled your ears with white men's lies. Don't believe a word they say. Their words are sweet, but my child, their deeds are bitter. You will cry for me, but they will not even soothe you. Stay with me, my little one. Your brother Dawei says that going to the east from your mother is too hard an experience for his baby sister."
When you were leaving, did you look back? And what did you see when you looked back?
I saw the lonely figure of my mother vanish in the distance, and a sense of regret settled heavily upon me.
Why's that?
I felt suddenly weak, as if I might fall limp to the ground. I realized I was in the hands of strangers whom my mother didn't fully trust. I no longer felt free to be myself, or to voice my feelings.
And did it get any better when you got to school?
The tears trickled down my cheeks. I begged to see my mother and Dawei, my aunt. I pleaded and cried, but the ears of the pale faces could not hear me. I was not happy, as I thought I should be. My tears were left to dry themselves in streaks, because neither my aunt nor my mother was near to wipe them away. I fell asleep, heaving deep, tired sobs.
Next, I sat down with Ms. Charlotte Perkins Gilman, the author of The Yellow Wallpaper. Here's what she had to say.
I've been suffering from depression for quite a while, and I was persuaded to get help. I went to see a neurologist, and he gave me this letter.
What does it say?
He told me I needed to live as domestic a life as possible, and to have but 2 hours intellectual life a day, and to never touch a pen, a brush, or a pencil again as long as I lived. As long as I live, now that's insanity.
What did you do?
Well, I went along with it for some 3 months, but I realized that doctor's plan wasn't going to help. And soon, I began writing again, and that's when I started The Yellow Wallpaper. I actually sent a copy of it to that lunatic doctor.
What did he say?
Oh, he never acknowledged it. I suppose he thought it was intended to make people crazy.
Was it?
Oh, heavens no. It wasn't intended to make people crazy. Not in the slightest.
And what was it intended to do?
Well, it was intended to save people from being driven crazy. And it worked.
Let's see what Willa Cather had to say.
So you wrote the book My Antonia, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can you just briefly summarize it?
Sure. It's a story about immigration that focuses on the struggles that they faced upon arriving in America. There are two main characters, Jim and Antonio, and it discusses in detail the differences between migrants and settlers.
Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yes, Jim is the role of the migrant because he likes to continually leave town to pursue other opportunities, including traveling and going to college. But he returns periodically to see how Antonia has made her life. Antonia is the settler, and she's had many chances to get out of the country, but she chose to stay and marry somebody that she loves and have a lot of kids. She is bound to the place that she first settled, whereas Jim wants to go out into the world and experience the different walks of life.
So what role does storytelling play in your book?
Quite a big one, actually. My Antonia addresses history through storytelling and how it can be told and retold and retold, and it eventually becomes more of a myth or folktale than history itself, such as the story of the wolves.
Oh yes, why was it that story, the violence of it, seemed so shocking and random?
Well, I really wanted to emphasize the amount of violence, and I did it by having the more horrible acts upon the quiet, idyllic countryside. I just thought it would be a nice contrast.
Coming up on Contested Frontiers.
So, Miss Loy, how goes it? The Feminist Manifesto.
To be honest, it's not living up to its full potential. I mean, sometimes I just want to yell at all the feminists and say, yes, professional and commercial careers are opening up for you. Is that all you want? I guess the whole thing is a little too new for people to accept. Although, I'm not sure why.
Ah, for the first time everything is new.
Is it?
Of course it is. You just need to be patient. Many women are weary about the movement simply because they're stuck in traditional gender roles. You know that. They'll come around though. Just keep at it.
I gave a speech last week, and everything was going well. But I wanted the audience to get a little more excited. So I said, women, you all must cease to place your confidence in uniform education. You're glossing over reality. You know what they did? Nothing. They did absolutely nothing. It didn't excite them. It didn't motivate them. It didn't prompt an emotional response of any kind. It just didn't resonate with them at all. I don't even know if they understood the importance of my request, the urgency.
I'm sure they just need a little while to soak it all in, the modernist ideas you're throwing at them. They might not know it by name, but they are all involved in the discussion of a new modernist idea every day. At least the terms veracity, actuality, real, natural, sincere, they're being discussed at length. Every word in the discussion being evolved from an identical discussion which took place the day before.
I'm not certain about the length at which it's discussed, but I do know one thing. I know that women must leave off looking to men to find out what they are not, but need to seek within themselves to find out what they are.
Ah, in that we're agreeing. People were so overly concerned with others' feelings and emotional state. They were afraid to do so much of anything less than offended someone. But really, it's an increasingly large problem in our society today. I actually just finished a piece that, in my opinion, reflects the whole thing. Go ahead, give it a quick read, see what you think.
This is just to say, I've eaten the plums that were in the icebox, and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. It's great, William. I love it. You do have a way with words, don't you?
And what about you, Miss Floyd? The master of structuring unstructured poetry? How's your latest collection coming along?
Quite well, thank you. I'm revising one last piece before sending it to the editor this weekend. What about you then? Tell me about your latest collection. I heard a rumor that you've already sent it to be published. But that can't be true, seeing as I haven't read so much as one poem from this supposed collection.
I'll let you have a look. Since you insisted. It's called Spring and All. I realized that the chapters were rather quick in their sequence, and that nothing much contained in any of all of them. But no one should be surprised by this today.